My daughter-in-law kicked me out after my son's death, but she fainted when she read the will.
Welcome to our story, family. Mom, you are no longer needed here. David's words fell like stones in still water. He was standing at the entrance of my little tailor shop on 8th Avenue in his impeccable gray suit with that cold look I no longer recognized. Behind him, Nicole held her designer bag with both hands, watching me as if I were an old piece of furniture that needed to be thrown away. My fingers stopped on the silk fabric I was sewing for a sweet 16 dress for Susan's daughter. The red thread hung suspended in the air just like my breath. "What did you say, son?" "You heard me. I have made a decision. It is for your own good." 68 years of life had taught me to read the silence between words. In that moment, as the Chicago sun poured through the windows of Martha's Tailoring, the business I had built with my own 2 hands over 30 years, I knew my son had not come to visit me. He had come to dismantle me. Let me go back a little bit. It was not always like this. David was born on a rainy day across the ocean, or at least that is what they told us. I was 33 years old when Daniel and I received the call from the hospital about a 6-month-old orphan. His parents had died in the sinking of a small boat trying to cross the rough seas to the coast. The Coast Guard rescued the boy wrapped in a makeshift life jacket made of plastic jugs. A miracle, they said. Daniel and I could not have children. We had tried for years, prayed at our local church, and visited doctors in our old country and later in Chicago, when we finally managed to immigrate. Nothing worked. But when they put that baby in my arms with his huge brown eyes looking at me as if he had known me forever, I knew God had answered my prayers in a different way. "He is our son," I told Daniel that night. "As much ours as if I had carried him in my womb." And he was. We loved him, as if we had been part of his conception. I worked double shifts at the clinic while sewing at night to earn extra money. Daniel cleaned buildings after his construction job. We ate cheap macaroni and cheese for weeks so we could buy David new shoes for school. We never complained. That is what parents do. They love, they sacrifice, they give without expecting anything in return. David was a brilliant boy. He loved it when I made his favorite meal pot roast with crispy potatoes and chicken with rice on Sundays. He would sit in the kitchen doing his homework while I cooked the smell of roasted garlic, filling our small house in the old neighborhood. "Mom, when I grow up, I am going to buy you a huge house," he would tell me, his legs dangling from the chair too short to touch the floor. "I do not need a huge house, my love. I only need you to be happy and good." But children grow, and sometimes they grow far away from the roots that held them. Nicole came into our lives when David was 28 years old. She was 25, fresh out of college in New York with an ambition you could feel like static electricity. She was beautiful. I could not deny that. Shiny black hair that fell like a waterfall over her shoulders, green eyes that knew exactly how to get what they wanted. "Mom, she is special," David told me the first time he brought her home. I had prepared roast turkey mashed potatoes with gravy and apple pie for dessert. I wanted to impress her to show her that our family, although humble, had heart. Nicole smiled throughout the entire dinner. She praised my cooking. She admired the photographs on the walls. She told David how lucky he was to have such a dedicated mother. "Your house is lovely, Mrs. Martha," she told me gently, touching my hand, so full of love. But there was something in her eyes when she looked around. She was not seeing love. She was taking inventory. Daniel noticed it too. That night in bed, he whispered, "That girl is hungry, Martha, but not for food." "Give her time," I replied. "Maybe she is just nervous." My husband was right, but I did not want to see it. When you love your child, you want to believe that whoever he loves also deserves your love. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony. I sewed Nicole's dress with my own hands, every stitch, a prayer for her happiness. I used imported silk that cost me 2 weeks of salary. It was worth it to see David so happy. Or so I thought. The first few years were good. David worked in real estate starting from the bottom, but with ambition. Nicole studied business administration at the local state college. They had Sophie, then Matthew. I became a grandmother and my heart expanded in ways I did not know were possible. I took care of the kids while David and Nicole worked. Sophie learned to bake chocolate chip cookies in my kitchen, her little hands rolling the dough with the same rolling pin my mother used in the old days. Matthew would fall asleep in my lap while I sewed the rhythmic sound of the machine, acting like a lullaby. "Thank you, Mom," David would tell me every time he picked up the kids. "I do not know what we would do without you." Daniel died 5 years ago. His heart, which had given so much, simply stopped one morning while he was drinking coffee on our small patio. He left me the house completely paid off after 30 years of sacrifice. He left me the tailor shop, which had grown from a corner in our house to a small storefront on 8th Avenue. He left me memories and the certainty that I had been loved, but he also left me alone. That was when things started to change. Nicole began making comments, small at first, like needles barely pricking the skin. "Mrs. Martha, do you not think this house is too big for you alone? It must be hard to maintain it. Mom, you look tired. Are you sure you can keep up with the shop? You are not young anymore. David, your mother forgot she promised to watch the kids on Tuesday. I am worried about her memory." I had not forgotten. We had never agreed on Tuesday. But when I tried to explain it, David looked at me with that new expression, the one that said maybe his wife was right, that maybe I was starting to lose my mind. I started writing everything down in a notebook, dates, conversations, little things I noticed, like the way Nicole inspected my house when she thought I was not looking her eyes, calculating the value of the furniture Daniel had built with his hands, the way she asked about my bank book, just to make sure I had enough. Susan, my neighbor and closest friend, warned me. She had seen this pattern before. "Martha, that woman, has plans." She told me one day while we drank black coffee in my shop, "Be careful. She is my son's wife, Susan, the mother of my grandchildren. I cannot think badly of her. When you finally wake up, I hope it is not too late." It was a Saturday morning when my world truly started to crumble. Nicole had come over to help me organize the closet. David was working and the kids were at a birthday party. It was just the two of us. "Mrs. Martha, you have so many old things here," she said, pulling boxes out of the closet with an energy that seemed excessive to me. "Why do we not let me help you decide what to keep and what to donate?" There was one box in particular that I had not opened in years. It was in the very back behind the winter blankets I rarely needed. A brown cardboard box sealed with yellowed tape. Nicole found it. "What is this?" she asked, her green eyes shining with curiosity. "Just old papers," I said quickly, trying to reach for it. But she was already opening it. Inside were David's adoption documents, original birth certificates, court papers, photographs of his biological parents, a young couple on a foreign beach, smiling without knowing that months later the ocean would take them. I had never told David the complete truth. We had told him he was adopted, yes, when he was 12 years old, but we told him his parents had died in a car accident, a white lie to spare him the pain of imagining their death at sea. And we never mentioned that there was evidence of all this physical proof of a past he did not remember. Nicole read everything, every document, every photo, every detail I had kept, hidden out of love, out of protection. When she looked up, her expression had changed. She was no longer the helpful daughter-in-law. She was a woman who had just found exactly what she was looking for. "Interesting," she murmured, her voice soft as silk. "David does not know all this, does he?" "Nicole, please," I started. "Do not worry, Mrs. Martha." Her smile was like poisoned honey. "Your secret is safe with me." But I knew that smile. I had seen it on the faces of loan sharks who came to collect impossible debts in the old country, in the eyes of corrupt officials who decided who ate and who starved. It was the smile of someone who had just gained power. She put the documents back in the box with exaggerated care, as if they were gold. "I am going to keep this in a safe place for you," she said. "We do not want them to get lost, do we?" She took the box and left, leaving me standing in my bedroom with the cold premonition that I had just lost something more than old documents. I had just lost my son. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes in David. He came to visit me less. When he did come, he was distant, his hugs shorter, his smiles more forced. The children stopped coming as often. "Mom, we are very busy," he would say when I asked. Work the kids' school. But I saw Nicole in the background observing our interactions like a movie director reviewing a scene. One day, David arrived alone. He sat in my kitchen, the place where he had grown up, where he had done his homework, where he had dreamed of his future. But this time, he had not come to dream. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation." My situation. My heart was already racing. "Nicole and I are worried. We see you forgetting things. You fell in the bathroom last month." "I slipped one time, David. One time in 68 years. But it could have been serious." He took a deep breath. "We have been looking into options. There is a very nice place, Sunset Gardens, where you could—" "No." The word came out before I could even think about it. "I am not going to any nursing home." "It is not a nursing home, Mom. It is an assisted living facility. You would have medical care, social activities." "I have medical care, I have friends, I have my shop, my home. This is my house, David, the house where your father and I raised you, where we cooked together, where we celebrated your birthdays, where—" "Mom, do not be difficult." His tone had hardened, a voice he had never used with me before. "We are trying to help you." I just stared at him. This man I had carried in my arms, fed with my food, protected with my love. When had he become a stranger? Or are you trying to help yourselves? The words came out bitter. His face closed off. "I do not know what you are talking about." But I knew. I could see it in the way he avoided my gaze, in the tension of his shoulders. Nicole had shown him those documents. She had told him that I had lied, and now, poisoned by her manipulation, he was here to tear me apart piece by piece. He left without saying goodbye. I stayed in my kitchen, the same one where I had made thousands of meals with love, and cried for the first time since Daniel died. 2 weeks later, David returned, this time with papers. "Mom, I found something while I was helping Nicole organize your closet." His voice was controlled, but I could see the anger boiling underneath. "Why did you never tell me the truth about my parents?" My stomach sank. "David, you lied to me." He threw the documents on the kitchen table, photographs of his biological parents scattered like fallen leaves. "You told me they died in a car accident. They died trying to cross the ocean, at sea. Do you know what that means? Do you know how many nights I have wondered who they were, where they came from?" "I was protecting you, son. You were 12 years old when we told you. How could I tell a child that his parents drowned, that the ocean you looked at from the beach had been their grave?" "It was not your place to decide that." His voice broke. "They were my parents. It was my history, and you stole it from me." "David, please let me explain. Explain that for 35 years you kept this hidden, that every time I asked you about them, you gave me half-truths." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he had inherited from Daniel. "What else have you lied to me about?" "Nothing, never. Only this, and it was out of love." "Love does not lie, Mom." His words were like knives. Nicole was right. She said there were probably more things you were hiding from me. There it was, Nicole's poison dripping from my son's lips. And you believe her over me, a woman you have known for 7 years, over the mother who raised you. She has not lied to me. The silence that followed was dense, heavy with all the unsaid things, with love being crushed under the weight of distrust. David took a deep breath. "I have made a decision. Sunset Gardens has a room available. You are going to go there. It is for your own good." "I will not go." It is not a request, Mom. He took more papers out of his briefcase. I already have power of attorney over your affairs. Dr. Martin certified that you have mild cognitive impairment. You cannot live alone safely. I looked at the documents. My signature was there from a doctor's visit Nicole had helped coordinate, saying it was just a routine checkup. I had signed so many papers that day, trusting that my daughter-in-law was taking care of me. She had set a trap for me, and I had fallen right into it. David, please do not do this. This is my house. Your father and I worked 30 years to pay for it. Every brick, every window is soaked with our sweat, our love. You cannot. I can, and I will. His voice was cold, the warmth of my son completely absent now. The house will be sold. The money will be used to pay for Sunset Gardens and cover your expenses. It is the most logical thing to do. The most logical thing. I stood up to my full height of 5 feet 2 inches, challenging him. The most logical thing is for a son to honor his mother, to respect the sacrifices she made, to remember that when he was sick, I was the one who stayed awake all night. When you needed money for college, I was the one who worked double shifts. When you are not my real mother. The words exploded out of him like a volcano. My real parents died trying to give me a better life, and you stole even the knowledge of their sacrifice from me. The silence afterward was like a bomb. We both just stared, horrified by what he had just said, but he did not take it back. You have 2 weeks to pack, he said quietly, gathering his papers. I will take care of the rest. He left, and I collapsed into the kitchen chair. The very same one where David used to sit and do his homework, where he used to tell me his dreams, where he used to be my son. The next few days were a blur. Susan came every day trying to cheer me up, trying to find legal solutions, but I knew the truth. David had the documents, he had the legal power, and he had the conviction of someone who believes he is doing the right thing. The boxes started arriving. Nicole had ordered them efficient as always. David came every few days to help pack, though in reality, he was just inventorying my possessions. This porcelain set can be sold, he would say, marking boxes. This lamp, too, the furniture. Well, some are antiques, they might be worth something. He was dismantling my life piece by piece, and I could only watch. Sophie and Matthew came to say goodbye. Their little faces were confused, their eyes filled with tears. Why are you leaving, Grandma? Sophie asked, hugging me tightly. I do not want you to go. Sometimes adults have to make hard decisions, my love, I whispered, fighting back my own tears. But I will always love you. Always. Dad says you will be better in the new place, Matthew said. Is it true? I looked at David, standing in the doorway, avoiding my gaze. I hope so, my boy, I hope so. Nicole did not come. Of course not. She had already won. She did not need to witness her victory. The day I left, Pastor Thomas came to bless the house. He had been our pastor for 20 years. He had baptized David, married Daniel and me in a vow renewal, and presided over Daniel's funeral. Martha, there are resources, he told me quietly. The church can help. There are lawyers who... No, Pastor, it is already decided. David is my son. If this is what he wants, then... My voice broke. Then it is what I will do. He gave me communion right there in my kitchen for the last time. The body of Christ felt like ashes on my tongue. Sunset Gardens looked nothing like the paradise David had described. It was a 3-story building on the outskirts of town, with walls painted a sickly yellow and a smell of disinfectant that could not hide other less pleasant odors. My room was small, 10 feet by 10 feet, shared with 3 other women. One of them, Dorothy, cried every night, calling for her children who never came. Another, Carol, no longer spoke. She just stared out the window with empty eyes. The third, Anna, welcomed me with a tired wave. Welcome to the Club of the Forgotten, she said. We were all left here by our families. Eventually, you will get used to it. But I did not want to get used to it. I did not want to accept that this small room with a bed that was not mine and curtains I had not chosen was now my home. The food was terrible. Tasteless rice, boiled chicken without spices, vegetables that seemed to have lost the will to live. Nothing like the pot roast I used to make, nothing like the crispy potatoes, nothing that tasted like love or home. The nurses were kind but rushed. Too many patients, too little time. They gave me my medications, helped me bathe, checked boxes on a list. I was just another chore, not a person. David came once in the first week. He stayed 15 minutes. "How are you, Mom?" he asked, looking at his phone more than at me. "Fine." I lied. What was the point of telling him the truth? The food is different. Well, it is nutritious. That is the important thing. He continued checking his phone. "I have to go. Work meeting. See you soon." "Can you bring Sophie and Matthew next time?" "We will see. They are busy with school, you know." That was the last time I saw him in a month. While I was at Sunset Gardens, my previous life disappeared piece by piece like sand through my fingers. Susan visited me when she could, bringing containers of homemade food, roasted meat, and sweet treats. The nurses let her in because they saw how much it lifted my spirits. "Martha, something is wrong," she told me one afternoon, her voice low. "I drove by your house yesterday. There is a for sale sign in the yard." My heart stopped. "What?" "And the shop. Martha's Tailoring has the windows covered. I asked the neighbors. They say David came with a truck last week and took everything." The walls of the small room seemed to close in on me. My house, my shop, everything Daniel and I had built, everything we had worked for was being erased as if it had never existed. "And my bank account?" I asked, even though I feared the answer. Susan showed me her phone. She had managed to contact the bank. "Look at your joint account with David. Martha, there have been large transfers. Very large. $80,000. My life savings. Everything I had saved penny by penny, working nights, skipping meals, saving on everything to have something for emergencies, for my grandchildren, for a future that now seemed so uncertain. All transferred to an account in David and Nicole's name. How? I could not finish the question, but I already knew the answer. The power of attorney. The documents I had signed thinking it was just a precaution. "Martha, there is more." Susan looked sick. "I talked to Mary from the bank. She says Nicole went in last week asking about your Social Security, your retirement payments. They wanted to transfer everything to their account for better management." The room spun. My breathing quickened. "Anna." My roommate pressed the call button. A nurse came running in. "She is having a panic attack," Anna said. "Breathe, ma'am, breathe." But how could I breathe when my own son was robbing me, when everything I had worked for was being ripped from my hands? "Susan," I managed to say between gasping breaths, I need help. I cannot stay here and let them." "I know my friend, I know." Susan took my hand, and I have an idea. That night, while my roommate slept, or at least pretended to sleep, I sat on my small bed and took out the notebook I had managed to keep. A cheap notebook with lined pages, but it contained everything. Dates, conversations, broken promises. I started to write. Not for me, but for Sophie and Matthew. Someday, when they were old enough to understand, I wanted them to know the truth. Not to poison them against their father, but so they would know they had been loved, that their grandmother had not abandoned them. "Dear Sophie and Matthew." I wrote, my handwriting trembling. If you are reading this, I am probably just a memory to you, if I am anything at all. I want you to know that I love you, that every moment with you was a gift, that the laughter in my kitchen, the cookies we baked together, the stories I told you about the old days, all of that was real. All of that was love. I continued writing until my eyes got tired, until my hand ached, filling page after page with memories, with lessons, with love. The next morning, Susan returned with someone. "Martha, this is Rose Miller. She's a nurse here, and I think she can help us." Rose was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. She reminded me of the strong but compassionate women from my childhood. "Mrs. Martha," she said, sitting in the only chair in the room, "Susan has told me your situation, and it turns out I have seen this before, too many times." "Really?" My voice sounded small even to me. My own mother. Rose paused, swallowing hard. "My brothers did something similar. By the time I realized it, she had died alone in a place like this, thinking nobody loved her. I swore I would never let that happen to anyone else if I could help it. But what can I do? David has all the legal papers. He has power over... Not over everything." Rose interrupted gently. "I have been reviewing your file. The diagnosis of cognitive impairment is questionable. Dr. Martin is known to be generous with such diagnoses if the price is right. And there is something else." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The money transfers the sale of the house while you are institutionalized, all without your explicit consent. That is called financial elder abuse. It is a serious crime in this state." A glimmer of hope, small but real, flickered in my chest. "Are you saying I can fight this?" "I am saying I have a friend, a lawyer. He works for a nonprofit organization that helps elderly victims of abuse. His name is Edward Vance." Rose smiled, "And he loves these kinds of cases." 3 days later, Edward Vance came to visit me. He was a man in his 50s with gray at his temples and the steady gaze of someone who had fought many battles. "Mrs. Martha," he said after reviewing all the documents Susan had obtained and after hearing my full story, "what has happened to you is a crime, and I am not just going to help you get back what is yours. I am going to make sure your son and your daughter-in-law face consequences." "I do not want to hurt David," I said quickly. "I just want my life back, my home, my dignity." Edward leaned forward. "Ma'am, your son might be your blood, but what he has done is unforgivable. And the woman he is married to, well, I have a feeling there is more to discover about her." He stayed for 2 hours taking notes, asking questions, building a case. When he left, I felt something I had not felt in months: hope. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Today my fight begins. Not just for my house or my money, but for my right to be seen, to be heard, to be treated like a human being instead of an inconvenience. Daniel, my love, if you are watching me from heaven, give me strength, because I am going to need every ounce of it." I fell asleep for the first time in weeks without crying. But miles away in the house that was once mine, David and Nicole were about to receive a surprise that would change everything. Because the next day, Edward Vance would file a lawsuit, and the carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation that Nicole had woven was about to start unraveling. The war for my life had begun. Rose Miller became something I never expected to find in Sunset Gardens, a daughter of the heart. It started with little things. She worked the night shift from 11 at night to 7 in the morning when the place was quieter and the other nurses were overloaded or dozing in the break room. Rose would come to my room with a real cup of black coffee made in her personal thermos. My grandmother taught me. She told me the first night we shared it sitting in the dark while my roommates snored softly. She used to say that coffee is not just a drink. It is conversation. It is family. We drank coffee and talked. I told her about Daniel, about how we met waiting in a bread line in the old country, both 18 years old, with the hope of a better future. I told her about the journey to America, hiding in the bottom of a fishing boat, seasick and terrified but determined. I told her about David, the miracle baby who arrived when we had already given up on the idea of being parents. "And your mother?" I finally asked. Susan mentioned that she, too... Rose's face darkened. "My mother, Carol, died 3 years ago, right here in a place like this. My brothers, Peter and Louis, convinced her she could no longer live alone after she broke her hip. They told her it was temporary just until she healed. But it was not temporary. No." Rose took a long sip of coffee. "They sold her house, kept the money. They told her they would come visit her soon. That soon never arrived. She died calling for them, wondering what she had done wrong to deserve being abandoned like that. I am so sorry, sweetheart. That is why I became a geriatric nurse. That is why I work nights in these places. Because if I can make even one person feel less alone, if I can stop even one family from making the same mistake. Her voice broke. Then my mother's pain was not in vain. We sat in silence, two women connected by the pain of being discarded by those who should love us the most. Mrs. Martha, Rose said finally, Edward is good at what he does, but he is going to need time. Meanwhile, can I ask you for something, anything? Teach me how to sew. I blinked, surprised. To sew. My mother tried to teach me when I was a girl, but I was rebellious. I thought it was old-fashioned, unnecessary. Now I wish I had something of hers, some skill she had. And you have 30 years of experience. If you teach me, it will be like keeping your craft alive, like honoring everything you built. Tears so common these days filled my eyes, but these were different, not of pain, but of purpose. I would love to, sweetheart, I would love to. Rose brought an old portable sewing machine to the facility. It was not as good as my beloved industrial machine at the shop, but it worked. We hid it in the supply closet, taking it out only during her night shifts. I started by teaching her the basics, threading the needle thread tension, straight stitches. Her fingers were clumsy at first, used to holding syringes and stethoscopes, not fabric and needles. Like this, look, I would show her, guiding her hands. The fabric talks to you. Feel how it wants to move. Do not force it. Work with it. Like with patience, Rose murmured, concentrated. Exactly like with patience. Other residents started to notice. Anna, my roommate, who rarely spoke, approached us one night. Can you fix this? She asked shyly, holding up a blue wool shawl with a large hole. It was my mother's. It is the only thing I have of hers. Of course, I said, taking the shawl carefully. The wool was soft, good quality, the kind they do not make anymore. I will teach Rose how to do an invisible darn. It will be like new. Anna smiled. She had not smiled in the 6 weeks I had been living with her. Soon other residents were coming with requests. A lost button here, a loose hem there. Clothes their families did not bother to replace or repair. We worked on every piece as if it were for a queen, because to these women it was. It was dignity. It was care. It was the message that they still mattered. You know, Rose said one night while practicing making buttonholes, this is about more than sewing. Right. What do you mean? These women do not just come because they need their clothes repaired. They come because you see them. You listen to them. You give them time and attention. Rose looked up. You give them what their families no longer give them. She was right. Our little late-night sewing operation had become something bigger. It had become a community, a chosen family. Meanwhile, Edward Vance was working. Every week he came with updates, his briefcase full of documents and determination. Mrs. Martha, I got the bank records, he told me during one of his visits, spreading papers over the small table in the visiting room. And this is worse than I thought. He showed me the transactions. $80,000 of my savings transferred in 4 large payments over 3 weeks. But that was not all. Look at these dates, he pointed out. The transfers started 2 days after you signed the power of attorney. And look at this. It was a loan application. David had tried to use my house as collateral for a commercial loan of $150,000. It failed, Edward explained. A real estate agent in debt, trying to start his own business, lost everything and then miraculously found another source of cash. My money, I whispered. Your money, but there is more. Edward pulled out another folder. I have been investigating Nicole Reynolds, or should I say Nicole Roberts Reynolds. It turns out this is not her first marriage. My heart beat faster. She was married before in South America to a man named Andrew Stone, a successful businessman 30 years older than her. They got married when she was 22. He died 2 years later. He died of a heart attack officially, but his family filed a complaint claiming Nicole had manipulated the old man to change his will weeks before his death. The case was dismissed for lack of evidence, but Edward looked at me meaningfully. Andrew's family says the pattern is exactly the same. Gain trust, isolate the victim from their family, gain control of the finances, and then leave with everything. I finished my voice barely a whisper. Nicole left the country with approximately $300,000. She came to the United States on a student visa. She met David 6 months later. Edward closed the folder. Mrs. Martha, your daughter-in-law, is a professional con artist, and your son is her latest mark. The room spun. All the pieces fit together. The way Nicole had appeared in our lives, so perfect, so attentive. How she had helped with my medical appointments, my paperwork, how she had found those adoption documents exactly when she needed them to manipulate David. But David, my voice broke, he is still my son. He chose to do this. Did he? Edward leaned forward. Or was he manipulated by a woman who knows exactly which buttons to push? Look, your son made terrible decisions. But Nicole, she is the mastermind behind all this. What do we do now? Now. Edward smiled, and there was steel in that smile. We file a lawsuit, not just for financial exploitation, for fraud, coercion, and elder abuse. And I am going to make sure every sordid detail of Nicole's history comes to light. 2 days later, David received the lawsuit papers. Susan told me later what happened. She was in her shop when she saw David walk out of his house, pale as a ghost with crumpled papers in his hand. Nicole came out behind him yelling, "I told you this would happen. I told you your mother was going to cause trouble." Her voice was sharp, piercing. "What are we going to do now, David? We used that money to pay your debts. We cannot give it back. You said it was legal. You said the power of attorney gave me the right to manage her finances." David looked like he was on the verge of a breakdown. "Manage, yes. Nobody said anything about lawsuits or criminal lawyers." Nicole realized Susan was listening and lowered her voice, pulling David back into the house. But Susan had heard enough. She called me immediately. "Martha, they are scared, very scared." That is a good sign. But I did not feel triumphant. I felt sick. This was my son, the boy I had raised, whom I had loved unconditionally. And now we were on opposite sides of a legal battle. That night, I could not sleep. Rose noticed during her rounds. "Mrs. Martha, what is wrong? Am I doing the right thing?" I asked. "David is my son. What if this destroys him? What if—" Rose sat on the edge of my bed. "What if what you are doing teaches him that there are consequences for his actions? What if it saves him from becoming the kind of man who can abandon his mother and sleep well at night?" "But the pain is already here, Mrs. Martha. You did not create it. He did when he chose to believe a stranger over you, when he signed papers to take your home, when he took your money." Rose took my hand. "Sometimes the truest form of love is letting someone face the consequences of their choices, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal preparation. Edward came almost daily going over testimonies, preparing me for what was to come. "His lawyer will argue that you have cognitive impairment and that everything was done for your own good," he explained. "We need to prove that you are completely lucid, that you can make your own decisions." We organized cognitive evaluations with independent doctors. They all concluded the same thing. My mind was perfectly clear. The impairment diagnosed by Dr. Martin was at best exaggerated and at worst fabricated. It turns out Dr. Martin has been disciplined before for questionable diagnoses, Edward said with satisfaction. His credibility is in the gutter. But the best evidence came from an unexpected place. My own hands. "Look at this," Rose said, bringing out several pieces of clothing we had repaired. "Every stitch is perfect. Every pattern is precise. A person with cognitive impairment could not do this work." What are you thinking?" Edward asked. "I am thinking," Rose smiled, "that Mrs. Martha should do a demonstration in court, show them exactly how capable she is." Edward laughed. "You are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." Meanwhile, the local community was finding out about my story. Susan, bless her heart, had started telling other business owners on 8th Avenue. The story spread like wildfire. An elderly tailor stripped of everything by her own son and a manipulative daughter-in-law. People were outraged. Many remembered their own mothers, grandmothers, the sacrifices they had made. Others had seen similar situations in their own families. "Martha, there are people who want to help," Susan told me during a visit. "They want to organize a protest, bring media attention to the case." "I do not want David to be publicly humiliated," I said quickly. "Martha," Susan took my hands, "David humiliated himself when he did this. The community is just reminding him what respect means, what family means." It was Sophie who changed everything. She was not supposed to know about the lawsuit. David and Nicole had been careful, they thought, hiding all the legal papers, whispering their conversations. But Sophie was 13 years old. She was not stupid, and walls are thin. One afternoon, while Rose was teaching me a new embroidery technique, there was a knock on the door. One of the day shift nurses poked her head in. "Mrs. Martha, there is a young girl here. She says she is your granddaughter." My heart jumped. "Sophie?" The girl walked in shyly in her wrinkled school uniform, tears in her eyes. Behind her was Matthew holding his backpack. "Grandma." Sophie ran to me, hugging me tightly. "I am so sorry. I did not know what Dad was doing." "How are you here? Where are your parents?" "At work. Matthew and I took the bus after school." Sophie wiped her eyes. "I heard Dad and Mom last night. They were fighting. Dad was saying everything was getting out of control, that they were going to lose everything. Mom was yelling at him that it was his fault for being weak." "My sweet girl." "And then Dad said your name. He said he never should have listened to Mom about you, that he made a terrible mistake." Sophie looked at me with those big eyes so much like David's as a child. "Grandma, is it true that Dad took your house, your money?" I could not lie to her. Not to her. "Yes, my love, it is true." Matthew's question was simple but devastating. Why would Dad do that to Grandma? "Sometimes," I said carefully, "adults make mistakes, very big mistakes, and sometimes they are influenced by people who do not have good intentions. Like Mom." Sophie was not foolish. "Grandma, Mom is a bad person." "It is not my place to say that, sweetheart." "But I can." Rose had been listening quietly. "Your mom, she is not being honest with your dad or with you. And your dad made the mistake of believing her instead of believing your grandma." Sophie sat next to me, still holding my hand. "Grandma, Dad says we cannot come see you, that it is complicated. But I looked it up on the internet. I saw the news articles. Everyone is talking about you." News articles. Sophie pulled out her phone. There it was. "The local community unites for elderly victim of family abuse. 68-year-old Taylor fights for her life after being stripped by her son." The dark side of elder care, a local story. Our story had gone public. Edward had done it strategically, I knew, to pressure David and Nicole. But seeing my life exposed like that, reading the comments of strangers debating my family. "Everyone is on your side, Grandma," Sophie said. "Everyone says you are brave, that you are an inspiration." "I do not feel brave, my love. I feel tired." "But you are going to win, right?" Matthew climbed into my lap, something he had not done in years. "You are going to go back to your house, and we are going to bake cookies again." I looked at Rose, who nodded encouragingly. I looked at these two innocent children in all this, caught between their love for their father and their inherent sense of right and wrong. I am going to try my boy. I am going to try with all my strength. Sophie and Matthew could not stay long. An hour later, David burst into Sunset Gardens like a hurricane. "What on earth do you think you are doing?" His face was red, the veins in his neck bulging. "They are children. They cannot just take the bus by themselves." "Dad, we just wanted to see Grandma," Sophie said, standing up bravely. "I told you to stay out of this. It is between adults." "But Grandma, it is not this." Sophie's voice rose. "She is our grandma, and you hurt her. You do not understand the situation." "Then explain it to me." Sophie had tears running down her cheeks now. "Explain to me why Grandma, who took care of us when you were the one who needed help, who cooked for us and helped us with our homework and made us feel loved, is now living in this horrible place. Explain to me why you sold her house, her shop." David was speechless. He looked at his daughter. He really looked at her perhaps for the first time in months. He saw her pain, her confusion, her judgment. And then he looked at me. In that moment, I saw the boy he had been, the boy who used to climb into my lap after a nightmare seeking comfort, the boy who brought me wildflowers from the park, the boy who told me, "I love you, Mommy," every night before going to sleep. "David," I said softly, "look at what we are doing to your children. Is this what you want them to remember? Is this the lesson you want to teach them about family? I was trying to protect you." His voice broke. "Nicole said you were not safe alone, that you needed professional care. And my money, my house, was that to protect me too." He crumbled, then falling into a chair, his head in his hands. "I was in trouble. Bad investments. I owed so much money. Nicole said you would want to help, that is what families do. And I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So you lied to me. You stole from me. You locked me up here. I'm sorry." The words exploded out of him. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I do not know how things went so far. I do not know when I stopped thinking clearly." "It was when you stopped thinking with your heart," Rose said quietly. David looked at her, noticing her for the first time. "Who are you?" "I am the daughter your mother deserves to have, the one who listens to her, the one who respects her, the one who sees her as a human being instead of an ATM." The insult hung in the air. David turned pale. "Dad." Matthew approached his father shyly. "Can we take Grandma home? I do not like coming here anymore. It smells weird, and Grandma is sad." It was too much for David. He stood up abruptly. "Let's go. Now, both of you." "No." Sophie stood her ground. "Not until you promise to fix this. Not until you bring Grandma back." "Sophie, I told you we are leaving." The little girl looked at me, tears falling. "I love you, Grandma. I am going to find a way to help you, I promise." David dragged them out, but not before Matthew ran back and gave me one last hug. "Do not worry, Grandma," he whispered. "Dad is going to fix this. I know it." The door closed behind them, and I broke down. Rose held me as I sobbed, all the pain of the last few months finally coming out. "I know," she murmured, stroking my hair. "I know, my love. But you did the right thing. Those children needed to see the truth. They needed to understand. And what if this traumatizes them? What if I ruined their relationship with their father? You were not the one who ruined it. He was." Rose straightened me up, looking me in the eyes. "Mrs. Martha, listen to me. Those children are learning a more valuable lesson than they will ever learn in school. They are learning that true love requires integrity, that family means loyalty, that you cannot just throw people away when they are no longer convenient." Edward arrived the next morning with news that would change everything. "I have been digging deeper into Nicole's past," he said, spreading folders over the table. "And I found something." Something big. He showed me police records from overseas, not just the case of her first husband. There was more. Before Andrew Stone, there had been another man, Harvey Moore, a 70-year-old widower. Nicole had worked as his private caregiver. 3 months later, Harvey changed his will, leaving everything to her. 2 weeks after that, he died from an accidental fall down the stairs. Harvey's family suspected foul play, but they had no proof. Nicole disappeared before they could investigate further. How many? I asked, my voice barely audible. That I can confirm 3. Harvey Moore, Andrew Stone, and now you. Although technically you are still alive, which ruins her pattern. Edward smiled grimly. I think that is why she is so desperate to empty your accounts quickly. You are still a living witness. My blood ran cold. David, is he in danger? Honestly, I do not know. Once she has taken everything she can from him, once he is no longer useful. Edward did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. We have to warn him. I already tried. I sent the documents to his lawyer. But Nicole has a strong hold on him. She has eroded his trust in everyone else, including you. Believing it now, then we do not make him believe it with words. I turned to Rose. Can you contact Susan? I need to ask her a favor. Susan arrived that afternoon with something I did not expect, her cell phone, showing a video that had been posted online. One of the customers at my bakery uploaded it, she explained. It has gone viral in the local community. Look. It was a video of the late-night sewing group. Someone had filmed me working my hands, moving with precision over the fabric, explaining techniques to Rose and the other residents. My voice was clear, my mind sharp. Clearly, there was no cognitive impairment. The comments were full of support. This woman is an inspiration. My grandmother was treated the same way. God bless Mrs. Martha. Her son should be ashamed. But there was one comment in particular that caught my attention. It was from an account called Sophie M. This is my grandmother, and I am going to make sure the world knows what they did to her. Sophie is fighting for you, Rose said, in her own way. We have to use this, Edward said, thinking quickly. If we can show that there is public support, community pressure, David might start to question Jessica. He might start to see that she has isolated him, manipulated him. And how do we do that? Robert smiled. With a public hearing, in 2 days we have the preliminary hearing. Normally it would just be lawyers and the judge, but I can request an open hearing and I can make sure the community knows where and when. Do you want them to come? I want them to fill that room. I want David to see how many people are on his side. I want him to feel the weight of what he has done. Robert leaned forward. Sometimes public shame is the only teacher that works. I was not sure. Exposing David like that in front of the whole community. But then I thought about Sophie and Matthew, about the kind of man their father was teaching them to be, about the future he was building for them if this continued. Do it, I said finally. Do whatever it takes. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I sat on my small bed looking at the notebook where I had been writing to Sophie and Matthew. Rose joined me sometime after midnight. Ready for tomorrow? She asked. I do not know. How can you prepare yourself to see your son in a court to publicly accuse him of theft? You are not accusing him of theft. You are claiming your right to live with dignity. Rose passed me a hot cup of tea. My mother never had that chance. She died thinking that somehow she had failed, that somehow she had deserved to be abandoned. Do not let David have that easy way out. Do not let him convince himself that this was for your own good. We drank our tea in silence, 2 women marked by family abandonment, both fighting in their own way. Rose, I said finally, if all this goes wrong, if I lose, you are not going to lose. But if I do, I want you to know that you have given me something invaluable. You have shown me that family is not just blood, it is choice, it is presence, it is love, demonstrated through actions, not just words. Rose had tears in her eyes. "Miss Martha, you have given me something too. You have given me the opportunity to be the daughter I could not be for my own mother, to do the right thing this time." We hugged, and in that hug I felt something I had not felt in months: hope. True, solid, unwavering hope. The morning of the hearing, Rose helped me prepare with special care. I put on my best dress, one that I had sewn myself years ago, still in good condition. She gathered my hair into an elegant bun, applied a little makeup. "I want you to look exactly like what you are," she said, dignified, strong, unwavering. When we left Sunset Gardens, there was a surprise waiting for me. Elizabeth was there with her car, but she was not alone. There were at least 20 more people, all from the neighborhood, all ready to accompany me to the court. "You are not going to face this alone," Elizabeth said firmly. "We are all going with you." On the way to the court, we passed by Main Street. My old shop was still there, windows-covered sign taken down, but someone had painted on the window, "Justice for Martha Seamstress Mother Fighter." Tears filled my eyes, but I did not let them fall. Not today. I needed to be strong. When we arrived at the court, it was like arriving at a rally. There were at least 100 people there, many that I did not even know, holding signs. Seniors deserve respect. Family means loyalty. Justice for Miss Martha. The media was there too. Cameras, reporters, microphones. Robert had warned me about this, but seeing the reality was different. "Miss Martha, how do you feel?" shouted a reporter. "What would you say to other seniors in similar situations? Do you think your son will go to jail?" Rose and Robert escorted me through the crowd, protecting me from the questions. But right before entering the building, I saw something that made my heart stop. David was there with Jessica by his side, but something was different. He was looking at the crowd with an expression of absolute shock, horror, realization. He saw the signs. He saw the seniors who had come to support me, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers, all united in righteous indignation. He saw Sophie and Matthew standing in the back with a neighbor holding a sign that said, "I love my grandma." And in that moment, I saw something in my son's eyes that I had not seen in months. I saw my David, the boy I had raised, the man who knew the difference between right and wrong. I saw remorse. The courtroom was full to the point of overflowing. Judge Mary Carter, a woman in her 60s, with a reputation for being firm but fair, looked at the crowd with her eyebrows raised. "This is unusual," she commented, "but we will proceed. This is a case of financial exploitation of the elderly state of Texas against David Miller and Jessica Woods." David's lawyer stood up, a neat man in an expensive suit that Jessica had clearly paid for with my money. "Your Honor, my client acted solely in the best interest of his mother, who suffers from cognitive decline and cannot live safely and independently." Robert stood up. "Your Honor, the defense claims cognitive decline based on a questionable diagnosis. I would like to call my first witness, Martha Miller." I stood up, my legs trembling but firm, walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The truth. After so many lies, manipulations, distortions, I was finally going to tell my truth. Robert started with basic questions, my name, age, history. Then he went deeper. "Mrs. Miller, did you sign papers giving your son legal power over your finances?" "Yes, but I was told it was just a precaution in case of an emergency." "Did they explain that this would give your son total control over your assets?" "No, Jessica said it was routine, that everyone does it." "And when did you discover that your house had been sold?" "When it was already gone." My voice cracked, but I continued. "I worked 30 years to pay for that house, my husband Daniel and I. Every mortgage payment was a sacrifice. It was our home, our legacy, and it was sold without even telling me." There were murmurs from the audience. The judge banged her gavel. "And your tailoring shop also sold. 30 years building that business. 30 years of clients' reputation, hard work. Everything gone. Mrs. Miller, can you tell us what you have been doing during your time at Sunset Gardens?" "Sewing. Teaching others to sew." Mending clothes for the residents. Robert nodded to Rose, who brought a box. Inside were dozens of pieces of clothing, all expertly mended, some with intricate embroidery. "Did you do all this?" asked Robert. "Yes, with Rose, my friend, she is learning." "Your Honor," Robert addressed the judge, "I would like to point out that this work requires fine manual dexterity memory for complex patterns, problem-solving skills, and executive function. None of these things are possible with significant cognitive decline," David's lawyer objected. "Your honor sewing is a learned motor skill. It could be muscle memory." "Then let me demonstrate," I interrupted. Everyone turned to me. "Give me fabric thread, a needle. I will show you right here, right now." Judge Carter seemed surprised but intrigued. "Permission granted." Rose brought me my small sewing kit. The judge handed me a handkerchief with a small tear. "Fix this," she ordered. With hands that trembled only slightly, I threaded the needle. The room was in absolute silence. Every eye was on me. I started to sew. Tiny, precise, invisible stitches. A French darn, one of the most difficult. My fingers moved with the memory of decades, but my mind was completely present, adjusting each stitch, checking the tension, ensuring perfection. 5 minutes later, I handed the handkerchief back to the judge. The tear was gone. Even looking closely, you could barely see where it had been. "Impressive," murmured the judge. "And you say you do this regularly?" "Every night, Your Honor. It is what keeps me sane in that place." I saw David watching me. His eyes were red. Jessica next to him. She was stiff, her face a mask of barely contained fury. David's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to establish that I was fragile, confused, unable to manage my own affairs. But every question he asked, I answered with clarity, with detail, with proof that my mind was perfectly intact. Then he made a mistake. "Mrs. Miller, isn't it true that you hid important information from your son, information about his adoption?" The silence in the room was thick. "Yes," I said quietly, "it is true. And don't you think that lie justifies his loss of trust in you?" A lie? I looked directly at David. One lie in 35 years of love, of sacrifice, of constant and unwavering presence. Does that lie justify robbing me, abandoning me, treating me like a disposable object? Your Honor, she is not answering the question. "Yes, I am." My voice rose. "I hid a painful truth from my son because I loved him, because I wanted to protect him from the trauma of knowing his parents drowned, trying to reach freedom. But he did not lie to me out of love. He lied to me for money. There is a difference." The lawyer hesitated, losing his momentum. The judge motioned for him to proceed or sit down. He sat down. Robert called his next witness, Elizabeth. She testified about the sale of the house, about seeing Jessica and David inventorying my possessions, about the conversations she had overheard. Then came Rose. She testified about my mental state, about my ability to care for myself, about the community I had built at Sunset Gardens. "Miss Martha does not need to be institutionalized," Rose said firmly. "What she needs is to be freed from a living arrangement she never wanted and never genuinely agreed to." But it was the next witness who changed everything. The defense calls David Miller to the stand. David stood up slowly. He looked sick, his skin grayish, his hands trembling. Jessica whispered something to him as he passed, but he did not answer. He swore to tell the truth and sat down. His own lawyer started with basic questions, trying to establish that he had acted with good intentions, but David barely answered his responses, monosyllabic, his gaze fixed on some point in the distance. "Mr. Miller," his lawyer finally said with frustration, "do you believe you made the right decisions regarding your mother?" Silence. "Mr. Miller, please answer." "No." The word was barely a whisper. "Excuse me. No." Louder now, David lifted his head, looking at me for the first time. "I did not make the right decisions. I made the easiest decisions, the selfish decisions, the decisions that someone who claims to love me convinced me to make." Jessica stiffened. His lawyer seemed to panic. "Your Honor, I request a recess. Your client is testifying," Judge Carter said firmly. "Continue, Mr. Miller." David took a deep breath, his hands gripping the edges of the stand as if it were the only thing keeping him standing. "Mom." His voice cracked as he looked at me. "Mom, I am so sorry. I was lost. I was so scared." "Mr. Miller," his lawyer interrupted nervously, "I advise you not to—" "No." David turned to him. "No more lies, no more excuses." He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, what I did was terrible, unforgivable. Allow me to explain how I got to this point not as a justification but as a warning to others." Judge Carter nodded slowly. "Proceed." 2 years ago, I made bad investments in real estate. I lost everything. More than everything, because I had borrowed money I did not have. I owed $150,000 to people. Dangerous people. David wiped his eyes. I was afraid of losing everything. My house, my family. Jessica was pregnant with Matthew. I panicked. That was when your wife suggested a solution, Robert said, standing up. Yes, at first it was just temporary help. Mom was so generous, she always had been. When I asked to borrow $10,000, she did not even ask what it was for. She just said, "Take it, son, family helps each other." Tears began to fall down his cheeks. But it was not enough. It was never enough. And Jessica, she kept suggesting ways to better manage Mom's finances. "Did she suggest you get power of attorney?" asked Robert. "Yes, she said it was for Mom's safety, that if something happened to her, I could help her immediately. It made sense to me at the time, but later—" David closed his eyes. "Later, every time we needed money, Jessica would say, 'Your mother has so much. She has lived her life. You have kids to raise. It is only fair. And the house.' That was when she found the adoption papers." David looked at me, his face twisting in agony. "Mom, when I saw those documents, when I read about my real parents dying at sea, I felt like my whole life had been a lie. I was so angry, so hurt." "And Jessica took advantage of that pain," said Robert. "Yes, she said that if Mom could hide something so big from me, she was probably hiding other things. That maybe she was not as lucid as we thought. That maybe she needed to be in a place where she could be properly cared for." David covered his face with his hands. And I believed her. God help me, I believed a stranger over the woman who raised me. The room was in absolute silence. Even Jessica had gone completely still, her face carefully neutral. "When did you realize you had made a mistake?" asked Robert. 3 days ago, I saw my kids at that protest holding that sign about their grandmother. And Sophie looked at me with such disappointment. She did not say anything, she just looked at me. And I knew I had failed, not just as a son, but as a father. Because I was teaching them that it is okay to betray the people you love when it suits you. David turned completely toward me now. "Mom, I do not expect you to forgive me. I have no right to ask for it. I just want you to know that every single day since I left you in that place, I have thought about you. I have slept poorly. I have eaten poorly. I have been miserable. And I deserve it. I deserve it all. Are you willing to testify against your wife?" asked Robert directly. Jessica stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, this is a circus. My husband is clearly under extreme stress and not—" "Sit down, Mrs. Woods." Judge Carter's voice cut like a whip. "Mr. Miller, answer the question." David nodded slowly. Yes, I am. Because everything Robert uncovered about her, the other men, the scams. It is true, she confessed it to me last night." The murmur in the room turned into a roar. The judge had to bang her gavel repeatedly to restore order. "Mr. Miller, can you elaborate on that confession?" Last night, after we received all the evidence that Robert had gathered, I confronted her. I showed her the documents about John Davis, about Andrew Miller. I asked her if it was true. David swallowed hard. She actually smiled and said, "Of course it is true. Did you think I married you for love?" The impact of those words reverberated through the room. I saw David visibly crumble, years of manipulation finally revealed in their total cruelty. She continued saying that I was the easiest job she ever had, that she had hoped it would be harder to convince me to betray my mother, but it turned out I was pathetically desperate. David wiped his tears aggressively. She said that once she depleted all of Mom's accounts, she would file for divorce and take half of whatever was left, that my kids would not even remember me in 10 years. "What did you do after this confession?" "I called the police. I recorded part of it on my phone." David took out his cell phone. "I have the recording right here." Robert took the phone, reviewed it, and nodded to the judge. "Your Honor, I request that this recording be admitted as evidence." Permission granted. Jessica's voice filled the courtroom clear and cold as ice. "David, you are so naive. Do you think this is personal? It is business. Your mother has assets. I have skills. The math is simple. And yes, Andrew was business too. John too. Weak men. All of you so easy to manipulate with a little affection, a little sex, a little pity party. Your mother at least had the sense to be suspicious of me. You never—" Robert stopped the recording. The damage was done. Jessica was standing up, her face now finally showing emotion. Pure fury. "That recording was obtained illegally. Texas is a two-party consent state. It cannot be used—" "Actually," interrupted Robert smoothly, "the domestic safety exception allows recordings when there is reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Given Mrs. Woods' history and the multiple suspicious deaths in her past, I would say there was more than reasonable cause." Judge Carter looked at Jessica with an expression of barely concealed disgust. "Mrs. Woods, I am going to give you the opportunity to testify in your own defense, but I warn you, anything you say can and will be used against you in future criminal proceedings." Jessica sat down slowly, her mind clearly working, calculating her options. Finally, she looked at her lawyer and whispered something. "Your Honor," said Jessica's lawyer, visibly uncomfortable, "my client invokes her Fifth Amendment right and refuses to testify. So it shall be noted." The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Miller, is there anything you would like to say before I make my decision?" I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking. My heart was beating so loud I was sure everyone could hear it, but my voice, when it came out, was steady. "Your Honor, for 68 years, I have lived with integrity. I have worked hard. I have loved deeply. I have sacrificed constantly, not for recognition, not for reward, but because that is what it means to be family." I looked at David, who had his head down, crying silently. When Daniel and I received David in our arms, it was not an act of charity. It was a miracle, a gift from God, and never, not for a single day, did we see him as anything less than our son. It did not matter that he did not share our blood. Blood is just liquid. What matters is love, actions, presence. "Mom," David began, but I raised my hand. "Let me finish, son. You need to hear this. Everyone needs to hear it." I turned to the packed room. I made a mistake in hiding the full truth about his parents from him. It was a mistake made out of love, but it was a mistake, and for that I ask his forgiveness. "Mom, no. But," I continued, my voice stronger now, "that mistake does not justify what they did to me. Taking my home, my money, my freedom, my dignity, treating me like an object, like an inconvenience, like something that can be discarded when it is no longer useful." I turned completely toward David. "I saw you grow from a scared baby into a man. I taught you to walk, to talk, to dream. I held you when you had nightmares. I applauded you at every achievement. I comforted you in every failure. And I never asked you for anything in return, because that is how true love is. It is unconditional." "I know," David sobbed. I know Mom and I destroyed it all. Yes, you did, but here is the thing about destruction. It creates space for rebuilding. The question is, what are you going to build now? A man who learned from his mistakes, or a man who continues to be a victim of his own weakness? I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I do not want revenge. I want justice. I want to recover what was stolen from me. I want to live my remaining years with dignity on my own terms. And I want my son to face real consequences, not to punish him, but to save my grandchildren from growing up thinking that this behavior is acceptable. And as for her, I looked at Jessica, who returned my gaze with pure hatred. I want her to face the full justice of the law, because if she does not, there will be another victim and another and another, and I cannot have that on my conscience. I sat down, trembling from the effort, but feeling lighter than I had in months. Judge Carter took a moment reviewing her notes. When she spoke, her voice was grave but clear. This has been one of the most disturbing cases I have presided over in 20 years on the bench. What we have witnessed here is a classic example of elder exploitation, compounded by family manipulation and criminal deceit. She turned to Jessica. Jessica Woods, based on the evidence presented, including your documented history of predatory behavior toward vulnerable individuals, I order the following. Number 1. You will be formally charged with financial exploitation of the elderly, a third-degree felony. Number 2. You will be investigated by federal authorities in relation to the deaths of John Davis and Andrew Miller. Number 3. You are ordered to pay full restitution to Mrs. Martha Miller in the amount of she consulted her documents, $420,000 for the house, $80,000 in stolen savings, and $50,000 in lost income from her business. Total $550,000. Jessica stood up abruptly. I do not have that money. It is already spent. Then it will be seized from any assets you possess, including the recently purchased vehicle, jewelry, and any bank accounts. Furthermore, you are subject to a 3-year suspended prison sentence under probation on the condition that you have no contact with Mrs. Miller for 10 years. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration. The judge turned to David. Mr. David Miller, your situation is more complex. You were clearly manipulated, but you also made conscious decisions to betray your mother. Your willingness to confess and testify against your wife is a mitigating factor. Therefore, I order the following. Number 1. 500 hours of community service in elder care facilities. Number 2. Mandatory attendance in family therapy and ethics counseling. Number 3. Judicial supervision of any contact with your mother for a period of 1 year. David nodded, accepting the judgment. As for the assets, continued the judge, the house has already been sold and the funds distributed. However, I order that 50% of the net value of that sale be returned to Mrs. Miller immediately. The remaining savings will be returned in their entirety. The tailoring business, although closed, will have its assets inventoried and returned or financially compensated. Your Honor, Robert spoke. There is also the matter of a life insurance policy that Mrs. Miller's late husband left. $200,000 that David and Jessica were unaware of. The judge's eyes lit up. Is that correct, Mrs. Miller? Yes, Your Honor. Daniel bought that policy years ago. I had forgotten about it until Robert found it. Excellent. That money, having remained untouched, remains entirely yours. With the insurance money and the ordered restitution, Mrs. Miller, you will have approximately $480,000, enough to start over with dignity. Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness but of relief so profound it almost hurt. Is there anything else? Asked the judge. Robert stood up. Yes, Your Honor. We would like to request that Mrs. Miller be released immediately from Sunset Gardens and allowed to live independently or with a caregiver of her choice. Granted. In fact, I insist upon it, the original placement was made under false pretenses. The judge looked directly at me. Mrs. Miller, you are free to go today. Do you have a place to go? Before I could answer, Rose stood up. Yes, Your Honor, she can stay with me and my daughters for as long as she needs, or forever if she wishes. Elizabeth also stood up. And the community is ready to help her reopen her business. We have already started raising funds. The warmth in my chest expanded. Family. Not by blood, but by choice. Then it is decided. The judge banged her gavel. Case closed. Mrs. Miller, may God bless you and give you many more years of a full and dignified life. Outside the courtroom, the crowd erupted in applause. People I did not know hugged me, congratulated me, cried with me. The media wanted interviews, but Robert kept them at bay. Later, he said firmly. Give her time. Then I saw David standing alone near the building. Jessica had been escorted by the police for processing. His kids were with a neighbor watching from a distance. I walked toward my son. Rose tried to accompany me, but I touched her arm gently. I need to have this moment alone. David saw me approaching. His face was a map of pain, shame, regret. He looked 10 years older than at the start of this nightmare. Mom, his voice was hoarse, I do not even deserve to speak to you. You probably do not, I said honestly, but I am going to listen to you anyway because despite everything, you are still my son. As the tears ran freely down his face, how can you even look at me? Because I know you. I know the boy you were, the man you could be, and I know that this, I gestured toward the courthouse, this is not who you really are. This is who you became under the influence of an evil woman. But I chose to listen to her. I chose to believe her over you. I chose to... Yes, you did, and now you have to live with those choices. You have to face your children and explain to them why you betrayed their grandmother. You have to rebuild your life from scratch. You have to do 500 hours of community service seeing what could have been my fate if I had not fought. I put my hand on his cheek. That is going to be hard, son. Very hard. I know, and I will do it. Everything the judge ordered and more. I swear, Mom, I am going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I do not want you to spend your life making it up. I want you to spend your life learning, growing, being better. I lowered my hand. David, I am not going to lie to you. I do not know if we can ever go back to what we had. That trust is broken, and it will take years, maybe the rest of my life, to rebuild it, if it can even be rebuilt. I understand, but I continued. I am not going to close the door completely for Sophie and Matthew, but for us too. Those kids need their father, the real you, not the shadow that Jessica created. Can you be that man? I am going to try. God, Mom, I am going to try so hard. Then start now. Go to your kids. Tell them the truth, everything. Do not protect them from your shame. Let them see the consequences. Let them see your regret. And then show them how a real man rises from his mistakes. David nodded, unable to speak. He leaned in as if to hug me, but stopped unsure. I opened my arms. Come here, son. He collapsed into my embrace, sobbing like when he was a boy. I held him, this man who had caused so much pain, who was still my son, who still needed his mother. I am sorry. He repeated over and over. I am so sorry. I know, and someday that might be enough, but not today. Today just go. Heal. Grow. And when you are ready, when you are truly ready to be the son I raised you to be, I will be here. I let him go, and he walked away toward his waiting kids, toward the hard work of repair that awaited him. Rose took me to her house that night. It was a modest place in the suburbs, a little bungalow with a garden where orchids and aromatic herbs grew. Her daughters, Chloe, 16, and Lucy, 12, greeted me shyly. "Grandma Martha," Lucy said softly, "Mom says you are going to stay with us. If it does not bother you to have an old woman like me around." "You are not old," Chloe protested. You are a warrior. We saw the news. You are all anyone is talking about." It was true. The case had gone viral. Videos of my testimony of my sewing demonstration in court were circulating on social media. Articles about elder exploitation cited my case as an example of why we need stronger laws. I had unintentionally become the face of a movement. But that night in Rose's house, I was not a symbol. I was just Martha, tired to the bone, but finally free. Rose prepared a hearty beef stew, her version of ultimate comfort food. We ate together at the small kitchen table, the girls telling me about school, Rose sharing work stories. "This," I said softly, looking around the table, "this is family." "Yes," Rose smiled, "it is." That night in the guest room that Rose had prepared for me, I took out my notebook. I had written so much during these dark months, but now I wrote something different. "Dear Sophie and Matthew, if you are reading this, it means you are old enough to understand. Your father made terrible mistakes, but here is the thing about mistakes. They do not define who we are unless we let them. I hope your father has learned from this. I hope he has taught you that integrity matters more than money. That family is not just blood, but choice and commitment. That it is never too late to do the right thing. I love you. I will always love you. And I hope that someday when you think of me, you remember not just the pain of these months, but all the years of love that came before. With all my heart, your grandmother, Martha." The next few months were a whirlwind of rebuilding. With the restitution and insurance money, I bought a small shop on Main Street, not far from where my original store had been. This time I called it Martha's Tailoring Second Chance. Elizabeth helped me with the paperwork. Rose and her daughters helped paint and decorate. The community donated sewing machines, fabrics, threads. In 6 weeks, we were open. But this time, it was not just a tailoring shop, it was a gathering place, a sanctuary. I hired 3 other older women from the community to work with me. Anna, my old roommate from Sunset Gardens, turned out to be an expert embroiderer. Dorothy, who used to cry every night, found peace in quilting work. Chloe, who had stopped talking, started teaching knitting classes, her voice slowly recovering. On Sundays, we opened our doors for free lessons. Young women came to learn the old techniques. Grandmothers and granddaughters worked together. Stories were shared over needles and threads. "You know," Elizabeth said one afternoon while we drank black coffee, "you have built more than a business, you have built a community." "That is because I learned something," I replied. "The family you choose is as real as the family you are born into, sometimes more real." David completed his community service diligently. He worked at Sunset Gardens and other nursing homes, cleaning, helping feed residents, listening to their stories. I saw him occasionally when I visited old friends there. He always looked humble, thinner, quieter. We did not talk much. We were not ready, but we exchanged cordial greetings. It was a start. Sophie and Matthew came to the shop after school. David had agreed that they would spend time with me, supervised by Rose. At first then, only when it became clear that I was not going to alienate them from their father. "Grandma," Sophie said one day while practicing straight stitches, "are you ever going to forgive Dad?" "What do you think forgiveness is, my love?" She reflected. "Forgetting what happened. No, forgiveness is not forgetting, it is remembering without letting the pain control you. It is choosing not to let the wound define your future." I guided her hands over the fabric. "Your father hurt me deeply, but if I hold on to that pain, if I let it turn into bitterness, then he did not just take my house and my money. He took my peace, and I am not going to give him that. So have you forgiven him?" I am working on it every day a little more, like this sewing, one stitch at a time. Time that healer we all trust did its job. 5 years after the trial, Martha's Tailoring Second Chance was a thriving success. We had expanded now, occupying 2 storefronts, holding regular classes, selling handmade products, and we had started a non-profit program, teaching sewing to low-income women so they could start their own businesses. Rose had become my official partner, leaving nursing to dedicate herself completely to our business. Chloe and Lucy, now in college, still helped on weekends. David had completed his community service and his therapy. He had divorced Jessica, who had served 2 years in prison before being deported back to her home country, where she faced charges for the deaths of her previous husbands. My son had started a new business, an honest one this time, helping seniors navigate estate sales and life transitions. He donated 10% of his profits to organizations fighting elder abuse. We saw each other regularly now, family dinners on Sundays, where I cooked the traditional dishes he had grown up loving. The trust was rebuilding slowly, brick by brick, but we had agreed on something. We would never pretend that the past had not happened. It was part of our history now, a scar we would always carry. "Mom," David told me one Sunday after dinner while the grandkids played outside. "I know I say this often, but I need you to hear it again. I am sorry for everything. I know, son, and I have reached a place where I can believe that you are sorry. Does that mean you have forgiven me?" I considered the question carefully. It means I have forgiven the man who made those mistakes, but I will never forget the lessons I learned about trusting too easily, about protecting what is mine, about recognizing manipulation when I see it. That is fair. And David, I looked at him directly, if ever, and I mean ever, I feel that you are slipping back into those patterns, into putting your needs above the well-being of others, I will tell you. And this time, you need to listen to me. Understood. Understood. I promise you, Mom. Never again. The local community council organized an honor ceremony for me on the 5th anniversary of the trial. It was in a beautiful hall on Main Street, decorated with state flags and bunting. "We are here," the presenter said, "to honor a woman who became a symbol of resistance, dignity, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit. Mrs. Martha Miller, they gave me a plaque, Heart of the Community, for your bravery in defending the rights of the elderly and reminding us what family truly means." People came up to share stories. One woman said my case gave her the courage to leave an abusive situation. Another said she had reconciled with her mother after seeing my story. A young man admitted he had been considering institutionalizing his father until he realized he was repeating my story. "You give me too much credit," I said when it was my turn to speak. "I only did what anyone would do when they find themselves out of options. I fought." "But that is the point," Elizabeth said from the audience. "Many do not fight. They give up. They accept. You showed us that it is never too late to rise up." I looked around the room. David was there with Sophie and Matthew, now teenagers, Rose with her daughters, Robert, who had become a close friend, Anna, Dorothy, Chloe, and dozens of other women whose lives had touched mine. "If there is one thing I want you to remember," I said, "it is this. Family is not just who gives birth to you or who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when you can no longer fight for yourself." I looked directly at Rose. It is the nurse who becomes a daughter, the neighbor who becomes a sister, the stranger who becomes a savior. Then I looked at David. And sometimes it is the son who failed but had the courage to get up, face his mistakes, and spend years trying to make amends. That is also family. The guy who chooses to stay even after everything has been broken. I am now 73 years old. My hair is completely white, my hands more wrinkled, my back more hunched, but my mind is clear, my heart is full, and my life is my own. Martha's tailoring, second chance, continues to thrive. Sophie, now 18, has announced that she wants to study fashion design. She says she was inspired by me by seeing that it is never too late to rebuild your life. Matthew, at 15, volunteers at Sunset Gardens on Saturdays. He says he wants to make sure no other senior is treated like I was. David and I have found a balance. It is not what we had before that is lost forever, but it is something new, something built on honesty and clear boundaries. It is love, but adult love. Love that has been tested and has survived. On quiet nights, I still write in my notebook, but they are no longer letters to Sophie and Matthew. They are memoirs, lessons, stories that I want to preserve. True love is not perfect, I write. It is resilient, it bends, but does not break. And when it breaks, it has the courage to try to heal, knowing that the scars will always be there. Rose comes in with coffee. We sit on the porch of the house we now officially share, watching the Texas sunset paint the sky orange and purple. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "About all the way we have come, you and I, David, all of us." "Do you regret anything?" I think about the question. I regret trusting too much. I regret not seeing the warning signs with Jessica. I regret telling the truth about his adoption the way I did. No, I say finally. Because all of that, all the pain and the betrayal and the struggle brought me here, to this life, to this family that I have chosen and that has chosen me, to this peace that I would never have appreciated if I had not known war. You are a wise woman, Miss Martha. Not wise, just old and stubborn. I smile. There is a difference. We sit in comfortable silence, two women who found family in the most unexpected places. And when the sun finally sets, leaving the sky dark but full of stars, I whisper a prayer that Daniel taught me a long time ago. Thank you for another day, for the battles won and the lessons learned, for the love that remains even when everything else falls apart, for the family not by blood but by choice, for second chances, for life. Amen, Rose says softly. Amen, I echo. And in that moment, in that place with this family, I built from the ruins of what I lost. I am completely, perfectly at peace.